Greetings, my beloved. So, the past 2 weeks I've been working from home, and aside having the concept of time just slip away from me slowly, I discovered that I'm quite into those YouTube channels focused on reading scary stories from the paranormal boards on 4chan. So, I figured that's a perfectly good idea right there. Why create something original on your channel when you can just take that, add a little ASMR twist, and there you go. So today I am going to be doing just that, despite knowing full well that that's in fact a slippery slope to reading Ask Reddit threads in a robotic voice. Also, I assume there are a lot of people out there, much like myself, who would rather listen to this story rather than actively watching me tell it. Therefore, this video will not be featuring any ads whatsoever. However, I'm also doing a mini video which will feature a shorter story which will only be available on my Patreon. So, if you're interested in that, go check it out. Now that's out of the way, onward to our story. I've never told this story to anyone, and I don't really intend to tell it again. I have a pounding migraine today, and this dread has kept me good company as I've drifted in and out. I don't really like talking about this time in my life, but I want to contribute. When I was about 10, 12, I lived with my mother. We were below poverty level line. We lived in the mountains around Santa Cruz, California. My mother had a friend that owned a large bit of property up there, and he let us stay in a trailer. Our trailer was very small and was right beside a garden. A chain link fence ran around the garden to keep the dog the owner had out, along with other animals. Deer and things are very common in the area. Also, inside the fenced area was a single room. It was built like a tiny house, but it was only a single room on the inside. The room had electricity, and our trailer didn't. I spent a lot of time in there. I was super into video games. The small fenced-in area was only a small part of the property, but most of it was heavily forested. Also, I refused to leave the fenced area because the owner's dog had been mistreated by children in the past and was very sketchy. If I was alone, it would bite at me even through the fence. The fence was tall, at least 7 feet high, and was movable, so as long as the gate was closed, I was safe. That said, tiny bit of the property, there is no one else around for miles. Now, I tell you all this because I think it's important to understand what kind of a scene this was before I really get into the story. We have a fenced-in location that seems fairly safe. It contains a trailer and a single room with power that is not connected to the trailer. Nothing else around for miles. My mom's van is parked out in front of the gate to the fenced area, and a single unpaved road runs from this garden for about a mile to the main house. Now and then, I brought friends up there to sleep over. We all thought it was pretty cool, like camping out sort of. Besides, we would get our own room to stay in, to play video games all night long. It was like a dream come true. The downside was simple. When it got dark out, it got really dark out. No city around, and the trailer would not be lit up. There was no bathroom to use in the room, and you would have to walk through the dark garden in order to get to the trailer to use it. Odd things happened out there from time to time. It was always something that could be somewhat easily explained away, though. Noises like people working at night sometimes. Or once, me and a friend were sitting out in the garden and we saw a shadow as big as a small bear bound up in a tree. But the tree didn't really shake like there was weight on it. The dog also creeped me out, but angry dog, I was a kid, it happens. Now, I was a scaredy cat. I always have been. To be honest, I really don't know why I even come to X. I have trouble walking through a lit house if I am all alone. My friends, however, tend to be more outgoing. Just the kinds of people I got along with. This time, I had a friend over. His name was Jacob. We were staying up all night playing Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on my Sega Genesis on a ratty television. We started playing as the sun went down, and by the time we were finishing up the game, it was about 2 a.m. That's when we heard it. We turned off the game, getting ready to find something else to play. There was a rumbling in the woods beside the house we were in. Like somebody was rolling something really heavy around. We hadn't heard it before because the noise from what we were playing was loud. However, I had goosebumps. Jacob was not really worried about it, but it's not like there was someone else's house or yard over there. It was forest for miles, and it sounded like someone was constructing something or some shit, dragging or rolling something really big. Eventually, Jacob convinced me to just play some more games. I agreed on the condition that we turn the volume down so we could hear it if something happened. We started playing, and I didn't even notice the noise stop because I was getting engrossed. A couple hours later, Jacob said he had to use the bathroom. I was feeling fine by then, so I was fine when he left the trailer to relieve himself. He was taking a while, so eventually I decided I was going to go check on him. Besides, I could use the bathroom and grab a snack while I was at it. I opened the door to leave, and he was standing at the doorway, right outside the door facing it. Scared the absolute shit out of me. I asked him what he was doing, and he just stood there, blocking the exit. I realized he must have been sneaking up to the door because I could hear him walk away from the room, but I haven't heard him walk back up to it. It was super quiet out there without the noise of the city. I should have been able to hear. He refused to say anything or respond. He just stood there. I told him he was really creeping me out, but it was not unlike him to try and scare me like this. Finally, I decided to just go to the trailer and use the bathroom myself, partially because I knew my mother was asleep there. I told him I was going, then moved past him. When I pushed him out of the way a little, his skin felt freezing to the touch. I jumped a little, but it was a cold night, and he had been standing out for 30 minutes, so I figured that was to be expected. I walked as quickly as I could over to the trailer. He followed me like right on my tail. It was unnerving. I joked a little, saying that he already surprised me by scaring me at the door. The joke was over already. Finally, I got to the trailer and walked in. He didn't follow, just stayed at the door. I checked on my mom, who was fast asleep, then turned to go to the bathroom. Now, it being a porta potty, we keep the bathroom door shut because, it smells bad. When I reach for the door and try to open it though, it's locked. A nervous voice comes from behind the door. I'm still here. I quickly turned to look at Jacob, but the door was still open and there was nothing but pitch black darkness. I freeze in terror. I would have heard the bathroom door open if he had come in behind me and gone that way. There was no way to do it quietly. It creaks like a motherfucker. I yelled so loud that my mom woke up startled. I stared at the doorway, unable to bring myself to move a muscle. She got up, walked over there, and looked out, not seeing anything. She closed the door and asked me what was wrong. By now, Jacob was coming out of the bathroom and acting perfectly normal, but a bit confused. I explained what had happened. Jacob said he was just taking a long time in the bathroom, basically. Neither of them believed me at all, no matter how much I insist. My mother is sure that I just got sleepy and imagined it. Jacob thought I was trying to prank him, so my mom gets out a big flashlight and walks us back to the room. She tells us to go to sleep and then leaves and goes back to bed herself. Now, this room doesn't have any windows or anything, so after a while I calm back down a little. I'm telling myself that my mom was right. I must have been like a waking dream or something. Jacob insists he was in the bathroom the whole time, and I'm inclined to believe him because there is just no way to really get around without being heard. So I settled down. I'm a little rattled, but I'm thinking I can just slip it off that night. The dog starts going nuts. Right behind us, the room is up against the fence, so the dog must have been like right behind the room on the other side. I felt like I jumped so high, I was surprised I didn't hit the roof. Jacob's laughing at me like the dog barking at a squirrel, some shit, and you're shitting yourself. It keeps going like that for a long time though. Suddenly, the barking stops and gets replaced by whimpering. We hear the dog run away. There are about 45 seconds of silence before we hear something new. A small scratching sound on the back of the wall against the room. We both try to be as silent as we can. Eventually, it stops. After 5 or so minutes of silence, Jacob decides to be brave. He insists he is going to get my mother up, tell her something crazy is going on, and we're going to go from there. With some kind of divine adult protection, no doubt. I wish he wouldn't leave me alone, but there's no way I'm going with him though. Never ever. He arms himself as best as he can with a tennis racket. Then he takes a couple of deep breaths and opens the door and dashes out. I close it as quickly as I can behind him. In less than 30 seconds, I hear a scream. Not long after, the door flies open and he comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He's breathing like he just ran a marathon. His eyes look as big as dinner plates. I ask what's going on like 4 times before he finally starts getting words out. He tells me he walked out, and as he walking through the garden as quickly as he could, he saw my mom just standing there. He tried to talk to her, but she stared at him with a blank expression. Getting super creeped out because of what happened to me earlier, he took a couple more steps towards her, telling her that he thought something was in the woods. Suddenly, her face turned to an awkward smile. Then he realizes something terrible. He hadn't noticed sooner because of the darkness and how much of a hurry he had been in. But she was on the other side of the fence. Now, the door to this room does not lock. And as I explained earlier, the room has no windows. He had been trying to move stuff in front of the door as he told his story, and by the end of it, I was helping him. In retrospect, whatever was harassing us seemed to be adverse to actually entering the room or the trailer, because the Jacob one didn't come in either time, and this door was not sturdy. Either way, we stacked everything we could against the door, thinking somehow that, like cartoons, it would definitely keep the creature out. For the rest of the night, we heard scratches coming from all around the room. I cried. Jacob looked like his mind had left his body with fear. At one time, I thought I heard it speak. I heard from the right next to where I was resting against the wall, in my mother's voice, quietly. The same exact phrasing and intonation she had used earlier in the night. "What's wrong?" followed by, "Go to sleep." The sun must have come up eventually. The scratching eventually stopped. We heard my mom come to get us, this time actually hearing footsteps. We absolutely refused to leave the room. My mom had to get the property owner and have him take down the door. When we saw it was actually her, I burst into tears again. We have never had any experiences like this again, and eventually moved out. But the night still haunts me. I still refuse to go out at night unless I am with a bunch of people, and I will never ever live in the woods again. That concludes our story. I sure hope you're not watching this before bed, because in that case, good luck falling asleep, I suppose. And also, thank you so much for listening until the end. And given the lore of the situation, thank you guys so much for witnessing me attempt to summon a skinwalker. 10 out of 10 experience. Would do again for you guys. Also, if there's any story you'd like to see featured on my channel in particular, just leave a comment or message me on any of my social media, and there's a very big chance it will actually get made. Because, fun fact, I really hate doing research on my own. Who would have thought, really? So, anyway, like and subscribe, and remember to always keep your head high, because God only gives the fattest asses to his strongest soldiers.